Welcome to Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I have my wonderful guest here, Marlene Summers, who is the VP of Customer Services and Community at Zuora. Marlene, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here.
Marlene has been with Zuora for 8 years. The company went public recently, and she has a wonderful background, so much insight in managing customers. Marlene, please, could you please let us know what is your role and your responsibilities at Zuora?
I started at Zuora over 8 years ago as the first customer success manager.
Mm-hmm.
So the company was pretty small at the time, about 20 people in Redwood City, 10 in Beijing, China. And I was brought on to work with our largest accounts at the time to do, after they went live on our platform, work with them and make sure they're happy and successful on the product. So I did that for 6 months. I spent a lot of time on site at the customers, so really got to feel their pain and learn what the product was and what we were doing. Our initial product was subscription-based billing, and this was, again, 8 years ago, where the concepts of subscriptions, like we had, you had your cable bill maybe, and you had your utility bill, but the world really hadn't become what it is today, which is this subscription-based economy where people can get services, get products on demand when they need it, based on usage, based on volume, based on what they want when they want it, and not too much, not too little. And that's really the foundation of what Zuora was, and what our founders saw is that the world was going to shift to that. So to actually see that happen in 10 years, to me is really remarkable and really kept me connected at the company. And after I was this CSM, then I took over building out the support function.
Right.
Because we realized early on, while the product had a really strong foundation, our customers didn't know what they needed to do with it.
Okay.
They didn't know how to change the way that they were currently just selling one-off things. How do you sell services? How do you provide those types of options to their customers? And so we had to build out a customer support team, build out customer success in a way, working with them to see what would actually work and what wouldn't work. And that's one thing I find the most fascinating about the industry today, and the shift and moving from like the traditional on-premise types of software to SaaS, is everyone kind of thinks, and we offer products, we do, and other companies do, that are meant to do this, but there isn't one single solution. Nobody's figured everything out. We're constantly evolving together. And so the best way, and the people that are the most successul, are the ones that are actually partnering with their customers and with their peers, and having a community of ideas and trying things. And so the companies, I think, at Zuora, I always found, like, really early on that, like, our executive leadership, they seemed to know what they were doing. Even though none of them hadn't done this, they hadn't been in that role to take the company IPO, but they had enough experience and they're asking the right questions, and we're building the processes in place. And I was like, wow, if this company can't do it, like, I don't know what can. And I remember saying that really early on. And it's a long journey to get, and it's very, very rare to start a company and actually do an IPO exit.
Right. So it's been 10 years, and I know your CEO came out of Salesforce. He was head of marketing, CMO at Salesforce. Yes. So he's taking this company from the ground up.
Young, and the vision and the leadership, drew me to the company, and then.
What was your number? What was your number in joining the team at that time?
I think I'm I'm employee 67, but at the time there was definitely not a lot of people in the office in the early days.
And now it's like 1,000 people or more.
1,000 people or more. I have.
And what's your team? Describe your team.
I have about 100 people in my organization, which still blows my mind away, because it used to be just me and 3 guys in Redwood City. So out of those 100 people, about 75% are technical support agents in a tiered model. And so we have presence in 9 of Zuora's 16 global offices. And so they do customer, like some aspects of traditional customer support. So tickets come in during via different channels, responding to those. I also have a technical documentation in the community team. So they're responsible for doing all the content for what I call like our customer facing collateral and content. So online product knowledge base, which we call the Knowledge Center. We have a online developer center, which has all of our API specifications that are automatically pulled out of the code, and then examples, code libraries, et cetera, as use cases, ways for the developers to quickly integrate with our system. And then the online community, which we launched now 3 years ago, to be a place where not just our users of Zuora, but everybody who's been participating in the subscription economy, which is now almost everybody, our partners, other people have interested, again, all is trying to share ways and best practices to do things. Because there isn't just a single answer. And what I saw early on was support too, especially technical support. The customer would ask a question like, what's the best way for me to set up the best type of like billing charge model to give my customers flexibility on, say, for newspaper subscriptions? Do you want to let them do it weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual like things? Do they want to have just print versions, online version, mobile version? How do I give the customer the ability to like suspend and resume? Like, they have all these questions, and support, we can give them very product, here's what you do in the product, here's what you do that. But we also have people in our professional services, they could be like, hey, if you thought of like maybe trying it like this way, or different types of use cases. So it's not just what can the product do.
Right, it's more consulting, advising, strategizing.
Right, and in the model of just doing tickets, that part gets lost. So we started building out the community where customers can actually ask those questions in the community, and then they can talk. People in support can answer, but also, again, people in services can answer. We have architects that are like, actually we call them customer success architects. So they're really involved in not just setting up an initial customer like professional services for go live, but they're really looking at, now that you're using our system, or I like to use the train analogy. So the train is going, right? So you're not just waiting to build the train. The train's already going. So for our customers that are live, that we call the install base, they are already operating. So what do they need to do now to actually get even better? Because very few people they don't want to keep going the same speed. They want to keep like accelerating their growth. They want to be like growing at like not 20%, 30%, 40%, like the hyper growing type of companies. So how do you do that though, while you have to keep maintaining the initial speed? And so getting that community type of involvement and different perspectives on what's working is the way to go. And what we've seen over time at Zuora, we went from just having a billing to then having payments, to then having, well, it's great if you can take, bill people and cut money, but you got to actually collect the money and then do like financial reconciliation. So then we came out with the finance product and taxes. And then that wasn't enough too, because now you have to actually do revenue recognition. So now we do that, and it's all up in a cloud, and then it doesn't live by itself, because it has to be connected in an ecosystem. And so when you look at that, we realize too, there's a lot of discussion, and obviously people think of support people as technical, but in customer success, just customer success manager, is that a technical person or not? And it really started to occur to me, 2 years ago, where even using that word, if a customer success manager is technical, doesn't make sense, because we have so much technical, we have too many different domains to cover. So we really had to look at subject matter experts per all of the different organizations in our company and build out that. So in my team, we have people now that just focus on, everyone get like a general overview of the product suite, but then they concentrate on billing. They concentrate on our Zuora for Salesforce products. They concentrate on platform, which is just understanding where everything's living in the cloud. They concentrate on finance. I've hired people that used to be controllers and accountants at other major companies to be support people to do tickets, which is like strange, but in this world of SaaS-based support, you need that.
You need deep
somebody,
expertise in
right,
that particular module. Of
exactly,
the
that they've actually been able to do, like they've done a job, and now we've hired people that used to be at like our customers, used to be our customers
You
in different roles.
over.
Yeah, and then they come here. So they've actually used the product, right? And so they're like, and then they're, and it's always really funny too, because the first thing they say is like, they thought like at their company, they were the expert at the product. Then they come here and they're like, oh my God, there's so much more that we didn't even know. And so I think that's another, like a principle that I always try to remind my team and other teams, where it's easy to like see, like sometimes when customers are asking questions, be like, oh, they should just read the help, and why don't they know this, blah, blah. It is so, our own internal people, it's very hard to like learn an entire product, to learn a whole industry, to learn these best practices, because again, they don't exist. They're evolving. And so to have, compassion for where the customer is coming from, and that it's not their job to try to learn your product. It's they're trying to do their own job, and they need your solution to be able to help them be successful. And when they're not successful, it's bad for them. I mean, it's bad for their company. It's bad for their career. So having that understanding and really like empathy for the customer can go a long way. Right.
And you have a 96% customer satisfaction rate, which is phenomenal. What about the leadership that is required to scale a team, from 3 to 100? And now that it's a publicly traded company, I assume it's going to even grow even more. So talk about your leadership a bit.
What I noticed really early on is, in a small startup, everybody's working, super, super fast, and where we were building out processes, from the corporate side, I always took it upon myself to build my own, but no one was like asking me to do it. But I'm like, well, it makes sense, right? And I was in project management, so I like things to make sense. So I would always like have annual type of goals and themes, and I started putting things in like three kind of buckets. So people, processes, and programs. And it applied really well. Like I still in some ways, I can run any team meeting with my team, just those buckets. So with people at each different stage of the company, are like, who are we gonna hire to do what job, and what does that look like? And early on, coming out of the recession, you had a lot of people in technical support type roles that were unemployed, right? And so it's like, okay, let's find whoever we can get, pay them the least amount as possible, and they have to learn everything, literally. And that's the model. And then again, you realize, okay, not the person that can actually understand Salesforce Apex code is not going to understand revenue automation. So you're like, okay, we're going to start to do the specialties, right? Okay. And then you have to think about, well, what are careers and levels, and what are people coming in, and what does that look like, and then career progression. Because the other thing, we kind of make it seem bad it's about the millennials or not, but in general, like in the industry, people want to see how they go up, right? So in early startup, you're like, I don't have time for that. Like I just want to hire people and we just do work. But people need to see that, and so you have to start building out, okay, here's career options, here's career plans. Like in technical support, it's been a great gateway for people to move into other teams, move into being a customer success account manager, move to being a sales engineer, move into professional services, move into IT. So because they learn so many good skills, and for the company too, for us to retain talent is really good to keep people that are in there. So looking at from people and the development, that's been really important, like in my team. And on like the processes too, when you're smaller, you're trying to figure out, do I buy things, or do I do manual, do I do automation? So you have to like balance all that, because a tool isn't just going to solve your problems. So you really have to understand what are your requirements, what are the tools that are out there, and then what is the best matches for those. Okay.
I know you're big into diversity and inclusion. How does that impact success, customer success?
I think when you think about who our customers are, they represent like the world, and we're selling to people all over the world, and people want to know that you understand their business. I think one really great aspect that I've learned a lot, internationally, how different, it is to work with customers that are from London versus France versus Japan versus China. And so for your own team to actually be diverse and reflective of that makes a big difference. So we have global coverage. Obviously, we work 24/7, and we get requests in at different times and go to balance those. But I also make a big effort to, like, when possible, give local support to customers, because it's what they feel better with. Yes. Like in France, they can speak English, but they prefer to speak French. So it made sense for us to hire not just people that speak French, but people that are actually in Paris, because that feels good. The same thing in Japan. I was recently there last month, and again, they feel like, okay, this company understands me because I actually have people that are in my country that are speaking my language and understand my customs. They understand the tone and the way that I want to be communicated with. Yes. And so that's important, and it changes the dynamics of just, outsourcing versus insourcing, and that what's the cheapest way to do support and what's the most expensive, but like really what does the customer want and what is going to make them feel with loyalty and affinity to you as a company. Right, the whole customer experience. Women in tech. You want to share your thoughts on women in tech? You've been very successful? Yes. Even back to school, there's very few women that are in computer science and computer engineering in general. That hasn't really changed, and I graduated from school over 20 years ago. And you'd think that, in other types of science disciplines, say like in the medical field, you have seen kind of a shift in the past like 20 and 50 years. And when I was started as a software engineer, even though there was less women, especially being at IBM, there was still like a lot of people. So it didn't seem like, you're one of few. But going into smaller and smaller companies, you would notice it like really quickly. And it's almost to the point where and I know I've heard other women leaders say that you're just used to that. So it doesn't seem like not the norm. And it's almost to, when we study like unconscious bias, we've almost trained ourselves to like see if there's a room of 10, a technical meeting, and there's 2 women, you're like, oh, women are represented. Because you've just developed this sense that like it shouldn't be 50-50. It should, it's going to look at that in this way. And what's what I still like continue to struggle with, but like as I advanced in my career, there's not as many women. But when you start looking at the statistics as you go up, the funnel gets even smaller. And so what can happen is that before I wasn't really, as though I was a software engineer, but I wasn't in management. I didn't have like authority power over people. I didn't have influence power. So not really as threatening. And as you go up though, that there is this level of threat. And I think we need to be more open and transparent about those types of feelings that are out there. Because not doing so, it makes women feel like, do I really belong here? Right? Like, why am I the only one like me? Why is this so hard? It shouldn't be that hard. People always talk about diversity and like, oh, it's a hard problem, right? Well, why is it so hard? It shouldn't be hard to do the right thing, right? It shouldn't be hard, but we have all these like actual overt biases. We have all these unconscious biases that are keeping women and underrepresented minorities from being in positions of leadership. and all the statistics show it's not getting better over time, and it starts really early on. Like I have 4 daughters. The oldest is 10, but by the time she was 6, and there's these summer camps, and so I ask, I have like 10 girlfriend moms. They're all working women. Some are in tech, but are in other types of fields. So I was like, oh, now there's these summer camps, and there's ones on coding. And again, these are like 6-year-olds that have had their iPads for a while. Like these are technology children in Silicon Valley. So I'm like, oh, who else wants to go to like computer camps? The first time you can go as a 6-year-old, and only like 1 of these 10 girls want to go. Mm-hmm. Or if you took any group of 10 boys, I'm sure you could get half to want to go at least. Mm-hmm. Like, why so early?
Yes.
Are even the 6-year-old girls opting out? And being also going international, it's really ironic to me because it's a different problem in different countries than in America and the US. Like in India or in China, it's not the same. There's different issues that women face, but not being in computer science and engineering is seen as a good thing. Mm-hmm. There's not this like, no, girls won't do that. But it is like that in the US. So we can't just say like, oh, it's just gonna figure it out, or girls have to like it, or we have to make programming be about pink and Barbies. Although I don't have a problem with pink and Barbies, but that's not the solution. The solution is really identifying why are we in the United States, why are women thinking that isn't an option for them? And I think when you look around, or you don't have role models, and you don't see people like you, like that affects you early on, and then it affects you all the way through your career.
Well, Marlene, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing about the customer support services, what it takes to be successful, talk more about your background, what your thoughts on women in tech. And Zuora, congratulations again for the IPO.
Thank you.
And we would love to have you come back to talk more about this journey that you're on.
Yes, I would love to come back. It's a really exciting time at Zuora. We have multiple products offered now. We continue to expand, and we continue to see the success of our customers really leading their own industries, and just seeing how the whole world has changed, and we're able to provide services to people all around the world. And so I'm super excited about this next year and everything that we can bring forward into the world.
There you have it. Take it up with Jessica Lee. Marlene Summers from Zuora.